I'm George Coates for Student Knowledge, joined today by Tanni Grey-Thompson. It's lovely to meet you. Finally, I've heard a lot about you, and obviously I saw you during the Paralympics and stuff. I thought I'd start just by asking you how politics compares to sports, because obviously you're in the House of Lords now.
The transition from sports to politics has been really interesting. I think it's a much bigger, less of a change actually than people think, because in sport you had to create your own networks, your own training partners, your own coaches. You were completely and utterly in charge of your career pathway and development. And actually, it's very much like that in the Lords. It's a place which is very much based on rules, which sport is as well. And knowing the rules is, really key in terms of actually understanding how to work and how to maximise your potential there. But also you have to find good people around, good support, and people that can help me when it counts, when I'm in the chamber, when I have to decide whether to take something to a vote or not. So for me, I think a lot of the stuff I learned from sport has been very naturally carried over into what I do now.
Have you found that the attitude that made you successful within sport also has helped you find a place within politics and perhaps influenced how you are within the House?
I think in sport, actually in anything, you should never be afraid to try. Everyone gets nervous, everyone gets stressed out, everyone's really busy, but you shouldn't be afraid to put yourself on the start line. And in sport, I saw lots of talented people who were too scared of losing and sometimes too scared of winning. And I think that's been really important. Sometimes that you might lose a debate, but actually it's part of a bigger picture of things that you're trying to change. So I think as well, just the focus that I had to have to be good at sport in terms of the amount of time I spent training. Actually the vast majority is really dull and boring for those few minutes that you're getting to compete. And actually it's the same, I spend lots of time writing speeches because I know I've got 2 minutes to change people's opinion to get them to vote with me. So I think in terms of the balance it's given me, it just made me realise from being a very young age that you have to work incredibly hard to try and achieve the things that you want to do.
Touching on the Olympics and the Paralympics quickly, 2012 was obviously the biggest year for sport in a very, very long time for England and Britain. Do you think that the positivity that the Olympics generated will be carried over to Rio within the country? Will we go to Rio with the same enthusiasm that people had for London?
The journey to 2012 was interesting. So I think beforehand a lot of people believed that it just wasn't going to be very good, and then suddenly everyone saw how amazing it was, and that carried on for a long time. But the reality is that people's memories fade, and the further we move away from the games, people will forget how wonderful it is. And I think a couple of months out from Rio, that spark will sort of be reignited again, and everyone will be behind the teams. But I think there's a lot we can do between games to actually encourage young people to be physically active, actually encourage all people to be active, but also to think how we can use the games for the most positive impact. And the danger is we could be in a position where that sort of drifts away and we lose an opportunity. We're not quite there yet, but we don't have long to actually really maximise what the games could be and the difference it could make to the rest of the UK.
Absolutely. Obviously that would cover legacy as well from 2012 and beyond. I just heard you speak about the Olympic Stadium and how that's taking up a lot of column inches, the fact that West Ham going to get it, Tottenham going to get it. How much more is there to legacy for Britain?
Legacy can be whatever you want it to be. I think the difficulty is that a lot of people thought about it as being the main stadium, because that's kind of the central focus for the games. It's where the ceremonies are held, it's where some of the biggest events are held. But actually, it's so much more. It's about education, it's about sport participation, it's about people thinking differently about what they can do. I've probably had more young people come to me and say they now want to be involved in creative arts because they saw the ceremonies and were blown away by, not only how amazing, but how different they were. As young people have said, they want to come and sort of be GB athletes. So it's hard. It's one word, and we try to encapsulate everything that it means. But actually, if the games change your life at all, that's part of what legacy should be about.
I think the ceremony inspired a lot of people to want to jump out of a plane with the Queen as well, which is fantastic. In your rise to where you are now, have you had one make or break moment that really stands out for you?
I haven't had one make or break moment. I've had lots. I've had, lots of things that were kind of thrown in my way, injury and, maybe, struggling with performance. Actually, when I had my daughter, there were lots of people who told me I couldn't be an athlete and a mother because being a mother would make me soft. Actually, it made me so much more focused than I was before. So I think there's lots of different sort of hurdles that have been there that it's always important to learn from. It's important to learn from the races you win, but also the races you lose. And I think that's built up resilience. I've just had lots of opportunities to try things, and sometimes they worked and sometimes they hadn't. And you learn from that as you go on. And I think, one of the probably biggest things that happened in my very young career is I didn't win a race for the first 4 years I competed because the best girl in Britain went to my school, which was really irritating. But, it taught me a million different ways to not win a race. And that actually then helped me in my later career. And that is sort of the platform for what I do now.
Absolutely. You worked on 2012, the TV show, didn't you? I was there, I was recording that show. I have to say that day of recording when we were out in the park was amazing and really funny. Was the organisation within the telly show 2012 anything like the organisation in terms of how pedantic it was? Like you were saying about how you were discussing bed sizes for a year and a half.
The TV comedy 2012 was so funny because in terms of some of the themes they picked up, sometimes they were really close. Luckily, we didn't have any of the 2012 staff who actually worked in the organisation, or the games would have been different. But, the games were about getting the detail right. It was about putting athletes at the heart of it as much as you could. And everything was about making it a good games for the athletes, because the rest looks after itself. The athletes compete well and they're not moaning, then the TV crews talk about sport, not about the wrong size beds or the bad food or the bad transport. If the media works well, then the sponsor's happy. So it was just really sort of simple things, although some of the decisions weren't always simple, but it was remembering the core reason for why we were doing it. So I have to say I'm very lucky that my experience with low cog was nothing like the TV series 2012, where I was planting a chocolate nut, which maybe I've had a few experiences like that outside that, but certainly not with the low cog organisation.
Tanni, thank you ever so much for speaking with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.